Here we go. Hello, everyone. It is that time of the week, 2 o'clock, Friday afternoon, and I am excited to have you here. It's not 2 o'clock quite yet, so we'll give people another 3 or 4 minutes to join. But if you want to say hello, just type in. I'm able to read the comments. I know you can't see my face and you can only hear me, but I just have this set up because it takes too many camera switches and adjustment to try to do both my face and the overhead view. So I hope that's okay, and I can always listen to you. I can always read your comments and I can always respond. I can read out your comments out loud and respond to them if you have any questions along the way. I love doing that. So if you're here, do say hi, type in, and I will respond. So before we get started, I did want to show you something that I'm super excited about, and it has nothing to do with what we're going to do today. But I have been taking these online card classes, and I highly recommend that for you, anyone who wants to do card making and wants to either get better at it or just wants to learn new ideas or learn how to stretch your supplies. It's a good place to go. They have lots of different not just card making techniques, they just have a lot of different techniques. There's also a class on watercoloring and lots of amazing people doing a lot of good crafting there. So I've been taking online card classes. They had a spring card camp that my daughter really wanted to join. And so I decided that I would sign up for that. We did spring card camp together. So Mira and I would get up in the morning, and that would be the first thing as I would have my cup of coffee and she would eat her grape nuts. It just became a ritual for us, and thank goodness they started offering a spring card camp too, which we also signed up for. So it's going to be, so that was 20 days, and now it's going to be 20 more days. We're already on day, 17 now, today? I think it was day 17, right? So 3 more days, and then there's going to be a vacuum in our lives, but I won't lie and say that I learned a lot. I probably picked up a couple of tips that I had never done before or tried before. There were a couple of things that really stood out to me as big time savers that I was really thankful for. So, for the amount of money I paid for it, it was totally worth just learning 2 things. I learned more, but I'm just saying, it's not that expensive. And this is one of the things I learned that I'm super excited about. Oh, hello, Claudia. Thank you so much for tuning in. So some of you might have seen me share this on Instagram and Facebook earlier this morning, but I cannot tell you how happy I am. I have just hated is a very strong word, but really disliked making shaker cards. I have attempted making them earlier. They just don't work. The sequence, they stick to the sides of the foam. The card becomes too bulky. It's a pain to mail. It always gets crushed if it gets mailed, and I just have had so many issues with it. I had given up on shaker cards, honestly. I really didn't think I would do shaker cards. For those of you tuning in right now, it is 2 o'clock, and I am not talking about what we're doing today. I'm just excited about this project, so I just want to quickly share something about this. So we'll get started in a minute. Just bear with me for 1 minute as I share my excitement. So when I did one of the lessons in the online card class with, I am forgetting her name, Heather Rue, I think her name is. She taught us how to do shaker cards with the whole card being a shaker card. And I put a photo of this on Instagram and on Facebook, but you got to see this in action. Look at this thing. So it's a full shaker card. I put some craft foam here so it has some depth. And then look, it moves. And it's a plastic sheet that I would have thrown away. It's from packaging. So all I did was I made my background with watercolors. I put a plastic sheet on that I would have thrown away that was from packaging. So it's recycling your plastic. And then I just put the sequence bits in and then sealed it on the other side and stuck it on the foam here. And I stuck the sentiment over here. And it's sealed and it shakes. Isn't that so cool? I'm going to be mailing this to someone dear to us. And her birthday is coming up next week. So I got to mail this today. But I just thought it was so exciting, so I thought I'd share it here today. Another one that I'm really excited about that I haven't shared on social media yet is this one. Oh my goodness, this was such a pain to paint. Hydrangeas, people, are very difficult to paint. So I had a really hard time doing this, but I think in the end it turned out okay. So I'll be sharing in one of my blog posts the process behind this and some tips on how not to do hydrangeas. So learn from my mistakes. Okay, so we are going to now start with our project for today. So this is what we're going to be making, and I don't know if we'll have time to be able to do all of it in terms of turning them into cards, but I will definitely share what I did after I did the watercolor and the doodling, so that you have a sense of how to turn these into cards for yourselves to mail to people that you love. If you're just joining in, type in and say hi so I know you're here, and if you have any questions, also type in the comments. So this is actually one sheet of watercolor that I turned into two separate cards, and I used the Arch Cold Press watercolor paper. Hi, Deborah. Thanks for coming. And I used my Karin markers. So I bought these Karin markers for my birthday as a birthday gift to myself. And they're watercolor brushes. I don't have a lot of experience using them, so I am going big first to be able to get a feel for the markers and see how the ink flows and how much the pigmentation is. So I'll be using those today, so you can kind of get a feel in the demo of how pigmented they are. But so what happened here was, what I was trying to do was something like this. This is what I was trying to do. I was trying to put some washi tape. I keep seeing these tutorials and I've never attempted it. So I figured, I have some washi tape. No, actually I didn't have washi tape yesterday. I had Post-it tape. So what I did yesterday was I just cut this Post-it tape. It's really thick, so I just trimmed it into thin strips and I applied that onto my watercolor paper. And then I did shades of pink. I just chose, like I did the greens over here, just did different shades of pink over here. And when I peeled the tape off, it was awful because I did not get the clear marks that I've seen people get on videos. So I was really super disappointed, and I thought, hey, you know what? I didn't use washi tape. I probably was, kind of trying to wing it like I always do, and washi tape has really low tack. So I went and thankfully in our move, I had remembered to pack washi tape. So I found the washi tape, which is what I used in this, and I haven't peeled it off because I want to peel it off with you and go through the emotion of either complete excitement or the emotion of another disappointment together. So we'll see, we'll come back to this. But so when I peeled it off, it wasn't very clean. I had all of these bleeds over here, and I was very disappointed that it wasn't very clean. So I started doodling on it. I tried fixing it in this one. You can see I just kind of thought maybe I'll just blend the colors and it'll work out. That made it look even worse. So I cut it up. I decided to use a good piece and I started doodling on it. And then when I had doodled on it with just a black pen, I have the Micron, the Sakura Micron. Is it the Sakura? Yeah, the Sakura Pigma. I don't know my pens today. The Sakura Pigma. And I used this to doodle. And when this started looking like, okay, this makes more sense now, I went back to this one and I just made some bold black lines to fill in all the blending that I was trying to do. So this is a result of a big mistake. That's essentially what I'm trying to tell you. And it's okay to have that. The lesson I am learning constantly in art is there are no mistakes. You can turn anything around. So just keep that in mind as we do this today, that things will likely go wrong and we will make the most of it. So if you have lemons, make lemonade. I'm a big proponent of that. Okay, so for today, what we're going to use is I have, this is the paper that I use. It's the Arches Aquarelle Watercolor. This one is hot pressed, and we're going to be using this. I see somebody asked a comment, oh, what is washi tape? It's a decorative tape. Thank you, Deborah, for responding. Lisa was asking, what is washi tape? What does it do? So it's a low tack tape, and basically when you remove it from your paper, when you peel it off, it doesn't leave a residue and also doesn't tear your paper. So what I'm going to do today, and this is real washi tape. These two are real washi tapes that I got from Etsy. So we're going to use the Arches Hot Press Watercolor Pad. Washi tape, make sure you're using washi tape. If you're using any other kind of tape, there are no guarantees you will get clear marks, clear lines. If you don't get clear lines, that's fine too, really not a problem. And I'm going to be using my Karin markers. These are watercolor markers that I'll be using. You don't have to use these markers if you don't have them. Mira is using her, Mira, can you get a couple of yours? So Mira's using just her regular markers that, kids get in the craft. These are Crayola Super Tips. She's using these and they work just as well. There's also a lot of color pencils. Derwent Inktense has these color pencils. These are water soluble. You could also use fairly cheap Stabilo pencils, the Woodies. These are also water soluble. These are wax based, so it's a different kind of pigmentation in this. And you can feel the waxy residue when you color with these, but these are very high intensity pigmentation. So these are also good. So, or you can use a watercoloring pan, you know. Anything you have on hand that's basically water soluble is fine. You don't have to use what I'm using today. So I am using Karin markers, I'm using the washi tape, I've got my hot press, I've got a water-filled brush, and I listed all of these supplies in the description, so if any of you want to go out and get some retail therapy after this live session, feel free to do that. I also have the Pigma Graphic 3. So this pen comes in different sizes. I have the 5, the 005, which is a micro tip, and the 2, which is a bolder tip for calligraphy. So these are the pens that I doodle on with when the paint is dry here. And if you're doing this along with me, feel free to use a heat gun. I won't be using a heat gun or any kind of heating tool to dry out because we'll be using a lot of water on this for the washes. It does take a while to dry, and you don't want to use these pens on wet paper. So if you are using a heat gun, that's fine. I don't want to use it because it's really loud and very annoying. So when I am done with painting this panel, I will actually peel the tape off of this one and show you how to doodle on this one. Okay, so I think that basically covers all the basics. We'll start with the washi tape first. I don't usually have a pattern in mind. I kind of just go from one corner to the other. Mira, if you want to watch and do, yes.
I have a question.
You can tear it off.
Like.
I don't want you making it very thin. I want you to have thick borders in between, because we want to see what the thick borders look like. So just tearing it off over there. And again, I don't really have a particular pattern in mind. I just go from one to the next, willy-nilly. So just do whatever comes naturally to you, whichever. If you are a person who loves symmetry and wants to have rectangles or triangles that are all the same size, go for that. If you are like me and don't really care and just kind of want to start painting, then do that. Just remember to press your washi tape down really, really hard so that when you're painting, it doesn't leak. Again, I will put that disclaimer in. If it does leak, it's all right. Not the end of the world. We will make it work. So it's just something different. I don't want you going into any of the activities I do on these art sessions with any expectations from yourself or your medium. I just want you to remember this is something that will give you joy. You're doing it for the process, not for the result. So just keep that in mind. This is supposed to be a stress-free zone, a stress-free time. And it needs to spark joy, because if it's not sparking joy in you doing these different techniques that I've been doing on these art sessions, then I'm not doing my job right. So I have to remind you, take it easy. Nobody's winning awards here. Oh, talking about winning awards. So I had put a form out asking for ideas on what my YouTube sessions should be about, and I only got one response. So if you have time, I encourage you to go to my Facebook page. The form is over there, and just fill out the form and give me some ideas on what you want to see on these YouTube sessions. I already have the next one planned, but for future sessions, or if you're here live today, right now, you can just type in the comments and let me know what you want me to do in future sessions. Okay, so I think I'm happy with this. I've got a couple of sections of varying sizes and odd shapes. I might want to just make this. The reason I turn it around is to be able to see where I might have gaps, because I'm not very neat at tearing my tape. Also, I have super early onset of rheumatoid arthritis. Sometimes my joints just don't work the way I want them to work, and it's hard for me to tear things out cleanly. I'm just going to tape that to the back. I think I've got a clean edge here, just checking from my edges, making sure my tape is pressed as tight as I can press it. going all around. Mira, how are you doing?
Good.
Oh, good. I see your pattern coming along too. Whenever you want to come share, you can share yours too on the screen so people can see what you're doing. It looks really different from mine. And that's also the point of this is do your thing. You don't have to do what I'm doing. This is your art. It's your time to be creative. Okay, so once we have this all taped up, Mira, can I see yours?
I kind of taped to my table.
You can always tape it behind. So Mira did hers, her taping very differently than mine. She has bigger, this is hers. So she, I think, is more symmetrical than I am. But it's cool. Okay, so we'll start coloring now. So I'm gonna take, for both of these that I showed you earlier, the cards that I made yesterday, I went with the light, I started out with the light pink, and I kept kind of, so this was actually how I painted it. I had started out with the skin tones, went into the pinks, and then I went into, this is how the sheet looked. So I started out with the lightest tones, went into the blush, the pink, the darker pink, and I went in the end with the purples. This was my entire sheet yesterday when I was painting. And then earlier this afternoon when I painted, I did greens, so the same thing. Claudia says, good job, Mira. Did the same thing with the gradient of the same color. So I just used the greens, and when it started lightening up, I went to the yellows. So for this demo today, I wanted to do something different and not do just the color gradients, because now you have two examples of what that looks like. So I set aside all my rainbow colors. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to actually quickly count how many sections I have here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're just going to repeat the order, I think. That's what we're going to do. Had I been smart about counting before I started taping, I would have made 7 sections, but who has time for that?
It's funny because I also have 10 sections.
You also have 10 sections? Okay.
Exactly 10 also.
So with the Karin markers, what I do is I just do like, and this is again true of any water-based markers you have, not just the Karin. I just kind of make my lines up there from where I'm going to pull the paint. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. I'm going to take my water brush. I have my rag right here. I'm going to squeeze out some water on this to make sure, on the rag, to make sure that water's freely flowing. There's no problems there. Just dump a lot of water over here on the top where I have all the color and kind of go in circles. And again, I have not learned art the traditional way. In an art school, I'm a journalist by training. My degree is in journalism. I'm a marketing and communications person. That's what I did in my previous life. So this may not be the way art teachers teach you how to paint. I am just sharing with you how I do it. So I did the intense color marker lines, and then I just went in circles, dropped a blob of water, went in circles, made sure the color kind of started blending, and then I'm now going in with straight lines and just spreading it out. So it's going from dark to light, so there's a gradient right there that you can see, and then I'm wiping my brush so that the purple tip is clean, and then we'll do the next color. And again, I don't want you to all do rainbow colors, just do your own colors. It doesn't have to be a specific way of doing this. So here, I'm going to go in, oops, I did my light blue instead of my indigo. Well, the indigo can go here. What would I do without these oops moments? Well, that's how I art. It's a good kind of oops. Have you ever read the book, Oops? What kind of watercolor tool you're using. This comes together really fast. So I'm going to do my indigo blue over here. Drop the tip of my brush is cleaned on my rag, drop some water. And this is what, for me, this is what makes it so zen, because it's repetitive. Same process over and over. But at the same time, it doesn't become boring because, I don't know, because I use different size tapes, I use different colors, it's a different pattern each time. So every single time, it's a new way of doing the same old thing. Now I have seen that with my blue especially, not so much with any other colors, but with this particular blue, also actually with the dark green, that you're still able to see the stripes from the marker pen and it doesn't blend all the way very smoothly. So sometimes what I do when it does that, and I don't want those lines to show, I'll just go back in and do wet on wet. So while the paint is still wet, just add some more ink from the marker and just try to kind of blend that area in, add some more ink from the marker. And I'm not dropping any additional water from the water brush, I'm just kind of blending it, and you won't see those lines disappear completely, but it's not, the transition is not that stark anymore. And again, you could leave the lines on there, doesn't matter, who cares, it's what you want to do. It's, you know, I'm gonna borrow this phrase from Lydia Fiedler, who goes by Understand Blue on Facebook and Instagram. She always says, I'm not painting for the Smithsonian. I'm not painting for this to be archived. I'm painting this for fun. Painting this to send it to someone or for myself. So I just love that she says that. She puts it out there because, you know, you should have fun doing what you do and you should do it in your style. The more classes you take, the more you hear from different people, the more philosophies you learn about, the more I find, this is true for me, the more I'm able to find my own voice. The more I'm able to disregard, the more I'm able to internalize depending on who's saying what. And that's really how I've developed my way of doing things. And it's not, most likely not, the right technical way of doing things, but it's what works for me, it's what gives me joy. And it's stress-free. And that's important to me, that when I do my art, when I do anything of this sort, it gives me joy. And if doing it the technical, correct way, the most precise way is important to you, then I encourage you to do that. You know, ultimately, it's what works for you is what matters. Now going in with the yellow and same thing, just making sure my brush is really clean. So I'm just squeezing some water out on the rag and cleaning the tip of my brush. I do not want color contamination. It's okay to have color contamination when I was doing gradients of the same color. But for this, I really want this to stay very, very distinct. And who knows if there's bleeding happening under this tape or not. We'll find out. Hopefully this will dry up by the end of this session and we'll be able to discover that together. If you have any questions while I'm doing this, again, type into the comments if you're not painting yourselves and fire away. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Okay, going in with my orange, same thing. It gets really wet, so don't be afraid of that, especially if you have watercolor paper. It's on a pad like this one is, it's not gonna warp. So do not be afraid to add water. I feel like this became too light. I just want this to be a bit more intense. I'm gonna go back in while it's still wet and add some more color to that and blend it right away without adding any more water this time. Mira, I see you walking around. Are you done with yours?
Yeah.
Can I see it, please?
Yes.
Mira's fast. She's already used all her markers to do her coloring.
I wanted lines, that's why.
You wanted stripes in yours? You didn't want it a complete blend? So she did exactly the opposite of what I was saying earlier when I was doing the blue and I was saying hide those. Like, I don't like those, so I try to hide them. Here's what she's done. So she wanted the stripes and she's used her regular old markers and she's made her own pattern. So do you want to go out in the sun and just stand over there for like a minute or so it dries up faster for you?
Yeah.
Because we can't use the heat gun. Okay, so I've got my orange. I'm going to do my red and she's going to get some vitamin D. So going in with the red over here, and because I'm using this longer sheet of paper, this unfortunately is unavailable on Amazon, so I don't have this linked in my video description, this particular watercoloring pad, but the others are the hot press and the cold press from Arches. They're all available in different sizes, 9 by 12, 8 by 10, I think they even have the 5x7s available, but this particular size is not available, so I haven't linked it. But what I like about this is that I'm able to get 2 cards out of 1 painting. So anytime I've done this, I've been able to make the most of this paper. So just kind of going in, adding more when I felt it had become too light. Mira, please don't lock the door. Okay. All right, so there's the red. So that's kind of the end of the rainbow. But I'm going to go back in since we have 3 extras over here. I don't want it to become super dark, and I also love this blue. So I'm thinking I'm going to do this area purple, dark blue, and light blue. And so the purple is going to be right up next to the red, which I think will make it look really pretty when we cut this out to make a card, because that's what I'm doing these days, making cards. And I'm actually curious to know, when you paint, especially when you've been doing art sessions with me, you've seen that for the last 3 sessions, everything that I've done, I have turned it into a card that has been sent out in the mail. I'm curious to know what you're doing. Are you turning them into cards too? Are you keeping them in a journal? What are you doing with all the techniques that we're doing together, that you're learning here, or that you're improvising on? I shouldn't say learning here, because some of you might just be watching because it's zen to watch coloring. So if you want to share what you've been doing with yours, I'd love to know. Also, another thing I had in mind was, if you want, what I can do is when I post the archived version of this video on my blog, I can put a link, I can start a link party. It's called a link party. I'm learning about all of this new terminology ever since I started doing these lives. So I can host a link party, and what that means is that I can have section on my blog right under the live video, the archived video, where you can go and upload images of what you made after that session. So for example, if you did some ink smushing with me, you can go to my blog, look up the ink smushing page, and it will have a link that will say upload what you created, and you can upload an image of what you made. So if people are interested in sharing, let me know, and I'll make sure to add links, I think it's called a linking party, so that we can all see what other people are doing. Now see, I forgot to clean the tip, so I got a bit of purple in this, but since it's such a dark blue, I think it won't matter. So Claudia is saying that she's making cards mostly, and that's great. You're spreading joy and multiplying the happiness quotient in this world. I'm really finding it therapeutic to make cards out of these, because really, what am I going to do with all of this stuff? I keep creating constantly, and it's just going to sit in my drawers, not to be seen again for a while. Okay, so doing the last patch here with my beautiful, I think it's called a cyan blue, yeah. And I want to have consistency in terms of where my darkest color is. So I'm going to just go here on the diagonal. Also, another thing, questions keep popping in my head. Real-time feedback from you guys who are here. If the sound quality, I have been wondering about that, because I did a Jelly Arts live the other day, and there were a number of people who said that the sound was really low and they could barely hear me. And a couple of people, I think, tuned out because of that. I did go back into the replay and I could hear myself just fine, but I don't know if during the live that was not the case. So if you can't hear me, just make sure you let me know in the comments. And I do have a wire thingy, what is that called? Something that my husband gave me today when I told him about that experience. So I can put that on, and that seems to increase the audio at my end. Okay, this is looking too linear to me. That's why I'm kind of going in and making sure I blend it a bit more so that line doesn't appear too stark. Okay, so this is it. How long did it take? About 15 minutes to do this. Now this is gonna dry up, So while this is drying up, I can't take the tape off, I can't doodle. I'm gonna let this be on the side. If you're doing this at home and you have a heat tool, now would be a good time to just use your heating tool and dry your background up. And then you can peel the tape away and see what happened. So I had done a piece earlier, right before this video, and I used the thinnest washi tape I had, which was a mistake because I had to be super careful around this, and that was stressing me out, so not a good idea. And I don't know if it leaked or it didn't leak, so we'll find out. Here we go. Mira, do you want to peel?
Yeah.
Okay, come here.
I'm coming.
Okay, go ahead, peel it. Let's see, do it on the camera, so. I can peel. Leaked over there. Leaked over there. But still pretty crisp. So it does leak in some parts, just so you guys know. So this is actual washi tape. This was a much, yeah, the line was much crisper over here when it's a shorter. Ooh, look at that one. Nice.
Leaked a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
How do I get this one off?
I think it might be taped to the back. Should we do it together so it's faster? Because this is like watching water dry, water not dry, made dry. Okay, water boil, that's the saying. Okay, here we go. If you can't peel that one, leave that one be and do this one.
I'll do this one.
Oh, there's something so satisfying about peeling tape. Ah, look at this. Big leak over here, massive leak. Leak alert. Okay, we're gonna doodle over there. Oh, look, these two came out together. Okay, so that's what that looks like. So it's very interesting. So when I was looking at it with the tape on, it looked really vibrant, and now it looks really pale to me. What happened?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it looks really pale. So, okay, so let's dress it up a notch. We'll get the pens out. I am going to start with not a 3, not a 2. The 005 is too thin. So we'll start with a 5. That's kind of in between all the others. And I'm just going to go around my colors. And this is all like, you have to give it a very sketchy, loose, sketchy. Don't use a ruler. I highly recommend against using a ruler when you're doing this. So just kind of loosely follow these lines. Does not have to be perfect. Perfect is not a word in my dictionary. There is nothing like perfect. It's all a myth. Just do the best you can. And that's good enough. Okay, so here, I'm just going to outline all of these shapes, the colored shapes. Sometimes you'll be inside the line, at other times you'll be leaving a gap between the colored shape and the white strip from where you peeled the washi tape off. Both of those are fine. Okay, it's starting to look better already, just with that addition of black. Makes it more defined and visually just more interesting. It's so funny how when I was doing the pinks, I didn't have that feeling when I peeled the tape off. It just felt like a very soft painting. Although I guess I was focused more on the disappointment at that time. And so that's why I didn't really even consider what the colors were looking like. It was more like, why didn't this tape work like it's supposed to work? Well, it did what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to help me get out of my head and get out of a notion of this is how things should be. So I'd make the case that it did work. Okay, so I've outlined all of my shapes and I'm just going to start doodling. And again, there's no one way of doing it. You could start at one end, go to the other. You could jump from shape to shape. I usually jump from shape to shape because certain shapes just kind of call out to me. And I don't really deliberate too much on what I'm going to do. I just kind of start. You have to start somewhere. Otherwise, you're just going to be staring at the sheet of paper and not know what to do. Mandalas come easy to me. I tried staying away from mandalas and the others. I want to point that out to you, that the only mandala close to a mandala pattern was this one. Everything else was just different shapes. So I don't always just doodle mandalas, but that is kind of my go-to because it comes easy to me. And I just do broad strokes first. I'm not going to fill in the details. I know that I'm doing that over there. Deborah, happy anniversary. Deborah says it's her 38th anniversary today. Gotta go order our takeout dinner. We'll watch the end later. Happy, happy anniversary. I love that you're doing something special. Okay, for this one, this is a big, big, big shape here. I'm gonna tackle that later. I'm gonna do this one first. And because it's green, the only thing that came to mind was a vine. It's funny how different colors just suggest different shapes. And if anybody wants to jump off, please do. This is going to be archived. You can watch it later. I know it's past the 30-minute time slot I promised this would be. And I do want to talk about how to turn these into cards once you've done the doodling, or at least how I do it. I am not very good at making leaves. I mean, I think I do a decent enough job, but maybe I should study the leaves outside a bit more to see how leaves grow. But this is what I can do, so this is what I'm doing. I'm not going to overthink it, because it's going to become part of an overall pattern. It's not a study in leaves, so I'm not going to let that faze me from continuing to draw these scribbles. Again, these are mindless scribbles. I encourage you to not think. Overthinking is definitely not part of it. If you can, try not to think. Just get into a meditative mode and just let your pen, your hand guide you. It's all interpretive at the end of the day. Thank you, Claudia, for liking my color combination. So to juxtapose with the wavy lines over here of the leaves, I think I'm going to do some circles here, because it's a completely different shape. And I think it adds some visual interest. Sometimes when I hear myself talk, I realize I'm not doing things in complete randomness. I do it driven by instinct, but as I'm talking through the process, I do realize that, you know, I have internalized a lot of these ideologies of what works and what doesn't work when it comes to art. I go by what pleases the eye, but when I was saying that this is wavy lines and I'll juxtapose that with circles because they're two completely different shapes, it makes sense because, you know, the eye is drawn to the differences, the stark differences between the two shapes. Okay, so over here, I want to do a crosshatch. Just gonna go do some straight lines. And then gonna go in, start with the middle, and just go down. What, Mira?
That looks like zigzag squares.
Okay. And then for here, let's see, I think I'll do some flowers. So with my flowers, I usually plan out the centers first. And then I do the petals, because when I'm planning out my centers, I'm also thinking about the shape of my petals. So I'll just do simple ones. I like these simple sketches because they're easy, even kids can do it. And actually I might have learned a couple of these from kids. Just being around them so much has influenced how I do my art and how to enjoy the process, because that's what kids do, you know, they don't think about what's right. They don't have a notion of the rules when it comes to anything. Art is one of them, and I think it's because they are so uninhibited. They are able to create so freely that we need to harness that. So just doodling some flowers here. You can do whatever shapes you want. You could make the sun, you could make the planets, you could make airplanes, you could make sailboats. Anything that speaks to you, that you want to draw. And it doesn't have to be a perfect drawing. I mean, look at these flowers, they're just so wonky. But they look cool together. I like them. Still not gonna tackle that.
Those
I'm gonna
flowers
go
are
here.
not wonky.
They're not wonky, you don't think so? Okay, so for this one over here, I think I want to do like a castle, I guess this is called a castle line. And just keep making that in repetitive mode. This is just so relaxing. You make a background and then you just doodle over it without any plan in mind. So for this one, I think I'll do some, I enjoyed doing spirals yesterday. What I want to do here, some spirals. And this is my darkest color on the sheet.
I feel mine on.
You can if it's dry. Just making some big spirals. How's everybody doing? Still with me? Okay, over here we're going to do some lines like that. I call these smiles. Lots and lots of smiles. I might fill them in later. I don't know, we'll see. Those big spaces are interesting because there's so much you can do and overdo in those. Okay, so that's done. Now for this one, coming back to it, what other shape could I make that makes me happy? I think I'm gonna do some rectangles, which again I'm not very good at making, with different sizes. Mira keeps coming and looking at what I'm doing and encouraging me and telling me I'm not as bad as I think I am. I love that. Thank you, Mira. Okay, so that. Here I know I want to do big dots, so I'll leave that be. And then for this last section here, I'm going to go in and make some wonky hearts. I love hearts. Some of them are sideways, some of them are straight up, some of them are thin, some of them are fat, some of them don't care, most of them don't care. They're just happy to be here. Okay, just this last section here, and
Can I show what I did when I peeled?
yeah, you can show what you did when you peeled.
I peeled mine.
Oh wow, look at that. That looks so different from what I made. Did you used which washi tape? Oh, you used the one that I used in the rainbow thing. Should we peel mine off and see?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let's just peel it off and see, because then it'll be an actual
Mine kind of
comparison.
The tape kind of tore the paper in some parts,
Oh, because it was still wet probably.
but then I just tore the colors and they looked fine.
I think it came out great. What do you think of it?
I like it.
I think this is probably the cleanest pull. As soon as I say it, I see a leak. But by far the cleanest pull of all the tapes that we've used.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 2:41, so I literally have 4 more minutes before we need to hop on to Mira's Zoom call. Here, love, you can have yours back so you can doodle on it later. Okay, so this one I'm going to do some dark black circles on, but I do want to use the last 4 minutes of this live session to show you what I would do to this to turn it into a card. So next steps. So doodle on this one, and I'll doodle on this one. I'll share what I did on Facebook and Instagram. So this is pretty much what I did next. So once I had my doodling done on my painting, I went ahead and I usually have my cardstock cut out and folded. So this is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And what I do is I measure that. I put this against over here. I see what kind of a border I want and I measure it. If I want a thin border, I will not cut off as much. If I want a thick border, I will. So it's this, I just cut it off, like leave this much of a border and just cut it off. Doesn't matter where it ends. Don't fret about that. That's one very important thing. This is going to cut off at a place where you don't want it to cut off. And that's okay. It does not matter. Because ultimately, when you turn this into cards, these are abstract patterns. It can be however you want it to look. Okay, so after I do that, I just glue it on. And that's when I start doing the embellishing. So if you notice in this one, there's some glitter. If I do that, maybe you'll see it. So I used my Sakura glitter pen and I just went and I added glitter in some parts, not all. I'll bring it closer so you can see. It's not everywhere, it's over here, and then there's some glitter dots over there, some glitter dots over here. So it's very, very subtle. It's not overwhelming. There are some circles, not all of the spiral centers are glitter, and then these are glitter over here in the border. So I just added some glitter and then I stuck on some of these gems. These are from Honeybee stamps and they're just easy, convenient embellishments to do. Stuck those on. These sentiment strips from Simon Says Stamp have been a lifesaver. I have linked to them if you go to my website under card making essentials. These are listed so you can have a look at them. I just cut these off with my paper trimmer and I apply whatever strips I have. I keep all my scraps. I don't use foam tape, I just apply those scraps on the back of this to give it some kind of an elevation. So it's not all the same, you can see that it's stuck, it's kind of lifted up from the card, and then that was it. And then I just added, because it looked like this was fading into the background, I added some white dots around the border. This was even easier, I just used again the same glitter pen from Sakura, and I added some glitter over here, I did some dots over there, and then I just added these sparkle gemstones from Honeybee stamps also, put on the sentiment, and really that was, it's as simple as that. It really is. It doesn't need to be complicated. These are abstract, happy cards that are supposed to bring happiness to the recipient. So I'll be doing exactly the same process with this one. I'll cut it, I'll paste it onto a card base, I'll do some extra embellishments on top, depending on what the pattern calls for. And then that's it, it's done. And if you want to go into these nooks and crannies and doodle away, I just did simple like cross hatches and any other like loopity-loop and circles, basically whatever came to mind. Wherever the edges were unclean, more unclean, I did more of this kind of a pattern where it was darker, and so the eye goes to the pattern and not to the paint spill, so to speak. But yeah, so that's essentially what we're going to be doing. These are thicker since I use a thicker washi tape here, so I'll have to get creative with this. So we'll see. Stay tuned for how this one turns out.
Me too. I have to think of.
For next week, I do have something in mind. So if you want to be prepared for that, what we're going to be doing next week is connecting dots. So this is my dot journal. You don't have to have a dot journal. If you don't have it, you don't want to buy it, please don't. If you want to, it's readily available on Amazon. I'm happy to share the link. But this is basically a journal that has dots, right? And lots of dots. And what I do is I sit down with my pen and I just start connecting the dots. And I just want to flip through some of these pages so you can get a feel for it. It starts out like this. Every single page is like this. It's just rows and columns of cards. So cards. Cards are on my mind. Dots. These are dots. These are not going to be turned into cards. But this is a project that I do every evening almost when my husband is watching TV, Mira's in bed, and that's my quiet time. Some of these, I'm actually realizing and looking back at them that some of these are very like clear-headed days that happened, happy days that happened. Doesn't look like this was a very happy day that happened. So at night, this is what came out. So yeah. So I'm going to be doing some dot journaling with you guys next week. So Friday at 2 o'clock, next Friday, we'll do some of this and we'll make our own patterns. You don't have to follow me again as usual, but I think it'll be really therapeutic to see what we come up together with. And I will add a link on my blog after the live so that you can upload your images and we can see what everybody created. So that's my time. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate everyone who was here and talking to me on the comments. It's really nice to hear from you, and I hope that today's lesson was added some value to your day and was not a waste of your time. And I hope that you'll be making cards with those or just keeping them in your journal and having fun with all the colorful techniques, the color washes and the doodling that we did today. So thanks again, and I will see you all next week.